Again, this is Socratic Seminar. Welcome everybody. This is a student-centered learning uh, situation, opportunity. I'll be passing the microphone around. People will make claims about the text. You have all the stories in front of you. You should be taking notes while we're doing this. Um, and we're going to start off with a question. What is your favorite story we've read so far this year, and why? Pass it down, Chris.
My favorite,
Yes, sir.
okay, my favorite poet has to be Annabelle Lee because it really goes through the relationship with her and even more depth and how even though they were separated, they still felt a connection and
Anybody want to challenge her claim? Now, you have to speak in a loud, clear voice so everybody can hear you. And um, I don't want to be predictable. This should be taken up. You guys should be leading this, okay? Uh,
Hi. My favorite Edgar Allan Poe story is The Raven because it is his descent into madness and
I
death.
can't quite understand what you're saying. The descent into madness?
Yeah.
Ooh. Tell us more.
Oh. I don't know what else to say. It's a really good story, and he goes. It shows how crazy he is. Like, it's like a reflection into his mind.
My favorite Edgar Allan Poe story is The Mask of the Red Death because I love how the clock, which is like one of the main symbols in the story, and how it represents how they're gonna die at midnight when the clock strikes midnight. And I love how there's different rooms symbolizing different things. The 7 rooms, and then at the last room, it like is suggesting that it's like death because it's like different from all the rest. It's black and red, and yeah.
Now, folks, when you're challenging, or I would like for you to use a couple of lines from whatever works. So when you're saying Annabelle Lee, you should say, in this line, when you're saying the Raven, the descent into madness, you want to. Now, what I liked about what Rebecca was saying was she gave 2 examples. She gave the example of the clock, and you should read something from that. So when you're about to make your claim, jump into your text, and you should be taking notes as you're going. I see John taking notes. Jump into your text. So this descent into madness is really good. And also, when she's talking about the 7 rooms, I don't remember who said it, but somebody put it so well that the 7 rooms were like he was walking through his entire life, going from birth to his death, as he's the 7, yes. But I'll stop talking. Somebody want to chime in on that, this descent into madness? Let's go. Come on. I think we're off to a great start.
Okay. I really think that even though the Raven just ascends to his madness, I feel like the Mask of the Red Death also has those aspects and also the Telltale Heart because there's really something very like there's something going on in his head that's making him want to write about this in such a way. For instance, in Mask of the Red Death, he shows how. Let me find it. It's on the last page. But now there are 12 strokes to be sounded by the bell of the clock, and thus it happened, perhaps, that more of thought crept with more time into the meditations of the thoughtful among those who rebelled. So this really shows that every single time the clock rang, it really had a meaning, even though they didn't understand that, and that just made me like get goosebumps just reading that line.
because they had no idea. And even though this is the first one in 1842, right? Like the one, there is still something very crazy about it that the Raven shares too.
Um, in in the Raven, I'm gonna read a piece from the text. It says that till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird says nevermore. So like he's like saying how he's like lonely and how other friends have or other people in his life have gone and come and gone. And like in Annabelle Lee, his wife passed away, and there's so many deaths in his family, and particularly like his mother like figure, his wife before, and then Annabelle Lee. It all like he's lost so many people, and I feel like that's where this madness is coming from. That's why he's writing all this, all these stories because he has so much to say, but his like he can't from all his loss, he's really putting it's shown in his writing.
One thing you guys can do is say, I validate what you're saying, and to expand upon that. So you want to use some of this kind of Socratic dialogue language. Like I think Rebecca's bringing some very strong points and text-based points. Can you please?
Yeah, I agree with what Rebecca has to say. I think that the Raven repeating the word nevermore reflects his guilt and how he somewhat feels responsible for the deaths in his life, even though they had no correlation.
I think the telltale heart also had something to do with guilt because his guilt was building up and the whole thing, like the beating heart symbolized guilt and everything. And I thought it was interesting because we were watching him. He was like becoming mad in the beginning, and the way he starts off the passage is like true. He already feels like he starts it off with he feels like he's being accused of something, so it already seems suspicious and like creates a tone for the rest of the passage.
Creates a tone for the rest of the passage. This whole mantra, descent into madness. As you guys are talking, I'm starting to actually realize each one of these stories is kind of it's even with the telltale heart, he's starting up. You think I am crazy? Well, let me explain to you how. What is the line? Let me explain how sane I am. But then by the end of it, he's hearing this imaginary. Is he really hearing the heart, or is he hearing his own heart?
He's just
Okay, Gianna. Very nice.
I actually think like the one story that really speaks mad to me is the Cask of Amontillado because it's so like humane.
A little louder.
It's so like humane and dark because everybody has that sense of like envy and distrust in somebody, but he actually takes that to the next level and actually makes one of his characters kill somebody else. But when the character does, he feels resent, and I feel like that's what truly shows how mad Poe is because it's like he takes out all his anger on his loss and puts it into his characters to make them do what they do.
Anybody want to validate, dispute?
yeah.
Guys over here, we need some action. Put that down, please. No back there. I have an eye condition. That hurts my eyes. See back.
Yeah, I agree with Gianna because in a way, not only does that show in the Castle of Amontillado, but it also shows throughout the different ones. Like, the Telltale Heart also has that. Like, he has that feeling of regret after he actually does what he does. And there's also something else that happens that shares between all of the 5 works right now. And the Mask of the Red Death is taken in the Masquerade. Like, all these works are in a setting. There's just one setting. They don't change. It's always in one place. Like, Mask of the Red Death was the castellated castle. The Telltale Heart was it was very gothic, how he kept it in one setting and just let the story go from there on. And in The Raven, it was in his chamber. The Castle Monster was in the catacombs, and Annabelle Lee was by the sea. That was the main thing that kept on repeating. So I found that really interesting that he has a way that there is similarity, like there's some ways that you can compare them throughout each one, even though they have completely different backgrounds to what he was
I think
thinking.
you're bringing up a good point. Would you say though that Annabelle Lee is more from the romantic
Yeah.
point of view,
Yeah.
whereas Cask and Mask are both supremely gothic? I mean,
Yes.
don't you think that The Kingdom by the Sea is much more from the romantic
It's
period?
a much more like softer take on what he's thinking.
Uh-huh.
It's more like a sad love song or style. I think it was kind of like lyrics you would hear in like an Adele song or something like that.
Okay,
But the Red Death and Casa Amontillado really take what's going on in his mind into words, and you just really see how his brain works, because all these things are really happening to him that he just is in a very depressed stage all the time, especially with Virginia being like bedridden in bed with her tuberculosis and people dying around him of the same reason. So you could really tell what kind of stages he's going through throughout each one of them.
thank you so much. We haven't heard from
Every time I hear a story of Edgar Allan Poe, it makes me learn something about myself. They all have the depressing and gothic thing about it. He has a way with words, but all of them have another human emotion with it. In Annabelle Lee, it's romantic stuff. In Casa of Amontillado, it's envy. Mask of the Red Death is fear. Telltale Heart is just regretting something or doing something bad. And the Raven is kind of fear again, or fear of the unknown. It makes me learn things about myself that I didn't even know I was afraid of or knew about. Like in the Raven, how do I explain this? I never visioned that someone that loved someone so much would feel bad about them dying, even though they didn't have anything to do with it. I never thought of that. Even though I've seen it so many times in movies, I never thought of it like it was that strong. That someone would think that they're literally going to hell of something that they didn't have any blame for.
Wow. I'm starting to cry. That is really profound. You know, that these stories awaken something in your heart, good or bad, gothic, revenge, fear, and it articulates. And I want to give everybody this concept. It's called the inner landscape. So we have a landscape around here, but we all have an inner landscape of depths of emotions. And so I think, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that Edgar Allan Poe articulates, almost like a tour guide, takes you on a tour of your inner landscape, of the gothic interior, and at other times of this descent into madness that somebody else brought up, which I never really understood that. But now, in this moment, I'm understanding that each of these stories is, to a degree, a descent into madness and an exploration of our inner landscape. So I think it's very interesting what you're saying. Let's keep going. Very nice.
So we were talking about how Poe did many good things and bad things in the stories, and how sometimes I felt how like he had no love for mankind when he killed Fortunato, and he did so many things, good and bad, and in this passage in the cast of Amontillado, he says, "My heart grew sick. It was the dampness of the catacombs that made it so. I hastened to make end of labor. My labor. I forced the last stone into position. I plastered it up again." And so like he's like feeling that little guilt, but then he pushes it aside. But like I feel like he did feel something. He does feel something. He just sometimes does an action the wrong way or takes it the wrong way. Like he doesn't know how to express it.
I wanted to say along the same lines that when I'm reading your document, when I'm reading your papers, you guys, in all my class, I'm getting more insights into these works. And somebody said with Cask of Amontillado, I thought it was so perceptive. I did not read it in other, say, in other um, scholarly works on these, that he actually was weighted down by his family's full acceptance of this way of life, that revenge is what marks the Montresor family, and that he was kind of carrying this like
Like a weight.
like a weight. You know, at times it's like he's wearing it like this is who I am, and he's celebrating himself. But then it becomes a weight that he's actually carrying, and he actually feels bad that he has just completely taken advantage of Fortunato. Let's talk about Castle of Amontillado for a few minutes. Shall we shift gears a little bit? Now, what about Fortunato? I think it's such an interesting story, yes? The amount of irony? Pass the potatoes.
He's like the main character, or one of the main characters is named Fortunato, but he goes on to being killed, and
He's not so fortunate.
yeah, he's not so fortunate. Like in the story, there's even more irony when he's like cheering to his wellness, even though he's knowing that he's gonna kill him.
So it's irony upon irony. Did everybody get how much? Is everybody clear what irony is after this? Go ahead, keep passing the potatoes. Thank you, Mason.
Yeah, what I've also noticed is that he also did the same thing with Prince Prospero. Like, yeah, like he's not very prosperous in the end. Like he gets stabbed, so it's not really the most.
But does he get
prosperous thing.
stabbed? Who's
I
Prospero does he get?
No, he gets.
Somebody counter her.
It's the mask. Yeah. He was about to stab the Red Death. That's what I meant to say, but it was very ironic. To add on to the irony of the Mask of Red Death, I mean, he had the tall walls shut so nothing could come in. No one could get in or out. So he invited 1,000 of his friends, guests or whatever, to prevent the Red Death or the disease to get in. Yet it still got in. It killed everyone. And one by one dropped their viewers in a blood-tinted hall. And it just like the art. I just like it because it's different. Like every single story of his is depressing. You know, like in regular stories, like fairy tales and stuff, it's always like a good ending. And in this one, like in Annabelle Lee, his wife dies, you know, and there's no happy ending. And I like that because it's different from all the other stories. But yeah, that's all I have to say.
Somebody want to add in? Yeah, Ava?
He goes through so much trouble to avoid death, and it's ironic because death ends up coming to him anyway. Like, and I think the Mask of the Red Death symbolizes death in general. Like, I don't think it's an actual person or anything. I think it's just like symbolic. And I think it also has something to do with how you can't avoid death. Like you did so much to avoid death, and it still like found its way into like. And he had all these barriers up.
Somebody open the door. I agree with you. Yes, he's trying to avoid death, and in avoiding it, is anybody there? Maybe it's the Red Death message. Oh, interesting. Thank you. Next. Yes, what do you want to say? Juliana?
Mask of the Red Death, and it's basically the same story but in different perspectives. Mask of the Red Death, Castle of Amontillado, and the Telltale Heart. All of them have something demonic or death-like in the story that
And the
they fear.
Raven.
And in the Raven too, they fear having experiencing that or coming to that point that they think that everything's gonna end. They're scared of what they're gonna see beyond that. All of these stories have that feeling of fear. They're all human emotions that we're afraid of. And I believe the same, losing someone. Castle of Amontillado is having someone betray you, someone that you thought was your friend. The Raven is dying and going somewhere that's not so good. Telltale Heart, doing something bad to someone and not being able to take it back. And the Mask of the Red Death is dying even though you had everything and you tried to avoid it.
Well, I think it's so interesting between, like with Raven, he's just going, he's trying to sleep, right? He's looking, but he doesn't know that death has come for him this evening. And it's like Mask of the Red Death too. Nobody knows when death is going to come. He's just there, he goes, will you leave me? Let my heart be still a moment. I put that bust above my door. And he says, both the raven. He's never going to leave. He's there for all eternity. Prospero thinks that that it's going to, he can live like this forever, but this is the day that. Anyway, keep going. I should be quiet.
So, in all the Poe stories, Mask of the Red Death, the Telltale Heart, the Raven, the Cast of Montellado, and Annabelle Lee, I found that all of them had very strong imagery. Like, you can imagine so many things, but a lot of things popped out on me. And in the Mask of the Red Death, when they introduced the Red Death, one of the main characters, and how they said the mask was made from human flesh and covered in blood. It's just Poe made him into a character, the disease, into a life character to make the story more authentic.
He makes the disease into a life character.
Yeah, and like we're questioning, is this disease a character or is it just a disease? And did it just, they tried to avoid death by bolting the doors, but it came in anyways. So, to make the story more interesting.
I think like the moral of a lot of his stories is like just that death is inevitable. Like you can't escape it, and no matter how much you try or who you confide your trust in, it's always gonna come and get you because we're all gonna die anyways. So
Very sober.
I want to expand on Rebecca's the thing that she said. There is a lot of imagery. I didn't think of this before. There is a lot of imagery, and as Gianna said, that they're about death is inevitable. We don't know what's going to happen when we die. It's fear of the unknown. We don't know, and we don't want it to happen. Our brain cannot imagine us not existing. Yet in the stories, there's so much imagery. You know what's going on in the story, even though it's discussing something that we can understand. As humans, we cannot understand dying at some point, not existing. But there's so much imagery. We understand what's going on in the story. It makes us see it in a way that we can understand. We can familiarize with it.
Oh, guys, this is my son Andrew. He's in 6th grade. Andrew, come over here. You can see that. I think you're bringing up some great points about imagery. Is Edgar Allan Poe a great departure for teaching irony, imagery? Do you want to talk about that from him? Go ahead.
I think he's like a great example as a writer because he takes everything to the next level and just explains it in ways that is like so like strange because the human brain can't possibly, like, it's proven that we can't think of things that we haven't seen before. So his, like Juliana said, his fear of the unknown that he shows in his work is just amazing because he adds irony and imagery and just turns a simple concept of like death into a story, and just like he makes his characters a life, not just a name on a paper.
He brings it. You're saying he brings it to life.
I agree with Gianna because fear is what's happening. He's doing it because of fear. And the Telltale Heart, the man's eye, symbolism, everything in Poe's stories, there's something that symbolizes. And in the Telltale Heart, it's the man's eye. It's not the man itself that is why he kills him. It's the eye. That the eye has a meaning to him, and that's why he killed him. And then he's feeling that guilt of afterwards, and how the heart is in the floorboards, and how he put it so that no human eye could ever find it. But then he just tells them anyways because he gives up.
Interesting.
To add on to that, at the end of towards the end of the story, he says, it grew louder, 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 and still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible that they heard not? Almighty God, no, no, they heard, they suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my honor. Skip ahead, he says, villains, I shrieked, dissemble no more. I admit the deed, tear up the planks, here, here, it is the beating of a hideous heart. So he ends up exposing himself not only because of the guilt, because he feels like they're on to him, even though it's all going on inside of his head. And I feel like he also has a chain of this throughout the other works because none of the characters are really psychopaths. Because psychopaths don't feel any guilt. So really he's just having this character who is put under a lot of pressure and has these crazy things going on, but even though a person would read this and just suspect that they just had mental problems and they were like a psychopath, they really aren't. They feel that guilt at the end of what they've done. So that's a really big concept in his other works too.
Now, I haven't heard anybody bring up alliteration, assonance, and some of the other little figurative languages. Let's talk about figurative language in the 5 works of Edgar Allan Poe. Anybody? I haven't heard from this chick magnet. We haven't heard from you today. You're usually with Timothy today. Okay, anything, let's talk about a figurative language in Edgar Allan Poe. Anybody?
Why are you doing
No, you do. We haven't heard anything? Nothing? Jada, I've seen you taking some great notes. You have any insights?
I'm trying to find one because I remember there was one that was really good and had a lot of.
Let's go our favorite lines from any one of the stories. Yes, go. Now you can.
Wait, this.
Yeah, it's at the very end. So I have them in order. So Annabelle is on the last page. And guys, as a result of working with all of you this year, just the other day I said, well, I'm going to put everything together. And so as a result of the research of this particular class, I created this document. And I think I'm going to use this forevermore. Like next year, I'm gonna reprint this. I'm gonna not say Socratic seminar here. I'll put something else. Maybe somebody can design something for me, a cover page. But do you like this little handbook? That everybody has it for the whole section. It goes into your hard binder. Yes, now you can go.
My favorite story that we read so far was Annabelle Lee because I feel like the narrator used really good comparisons and how they're strong, their love was really strong. I like the comparison when it said, and neither the angels in heaven above nor the demons down under the sea can ever despair my soul from the soul of my beautiful Annabelle.
That line is so beautiful. Can ever dissever, can ever separate my soul from the soul. Boy, I think there's the angel of death. Oh look, that came. We're gonna get a new trash off. Yeah.
No, don't
Okay,
do that.
go, Jana. Jana. Oh, good. We'll go to you next. Go.
So my favorite lines was again in Annabelle Lee, but it's for the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabelle Lee, and the stars never rise, but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabelle Lee. And so all the night tide, I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride. In this
Sepulcher.
Okay, sepulcher. There by the sea, and her tomb by the sun and sea.
Wow.
It's just so mystical in a way,
Uh-huh.
and very romantic, and just because it shows how much she cares for her, even though she might not be here. Because whenever somebody passes away, we always still think of them, and we always keep them in a place in our hearts. But he just shows this in a different way. It's I'm still in love with her kind of thing.
I think it's so romantic. I mean, for the moon never beams without bringing me dreams. It's unbelievable.
My favorite line in The Raven is doubting, dreaming, dream is no more, will ever dare to dream before. It's just a raven, which is such a common animal, brought such terror to him, and it's he interpreted the raven as being something of evil nature when
It's just a raven.
It's just a bird.
It's just a bird.
Uh-huh. Very nice. Counting, dreaming, dreams no mortals ever dare. I mean, to put so much alliteration in it, I mean, I think it takes courage to do that. I mean, you gotta be out there, go.
I want to add to what Dorian said because the Raven just has so much like figurative language, alliteration, and accents. Like Circus out in certain wrestling of each purple curtain, and like it just adds on to the tone of like gothic feel and like the whimsical feel.
The silken sat uncertain rustling each purple print. Very nice, thank you. Joshua, do you wanna get in here?
Okay. My favorite line is in The Raven. It's the only word that was spoken was the whispered word Lenore. This I whispered, and Echo murmured back the word Lenore. Merely this and nothing more. So right before that, he was thinking that he was in hell because his wife just passed away, and he was thinking about her so much that even the tiny bit of noise, like a raindrop or like a tap at the door or the wind, made him run to the door because he thought someone was knocking, and he opened it, and he was like, he whispered his wife's name, Lenore, and then I think because he was thinking about it so much that he thought an echo murmured back the words Lenore. And then he rushes back to his chamber, and his mind is going crazy because he's like, what? I just heard my dead wife's name. Like, I feel like that's just the mind playing tricks on him because he's like going kind of crazy.
He's kind of descent into madness.
Yeah.
But you know, I think our culture is so dominated by things that are visual. We can turn on Netflix and Amazon Prime and see anything we want. But here, the line that you're saying, open the darkness there, nothing more. Deep into that darkness, bearing long eyes, stood there wondering, bearing, doubting, dreaming, grief. You know, he actually, you are the one imagining it, not when we're watching a cinema, they're imagining it for us. But with this level of poetry and this level of writing, like I like that line in Mass where he's describing this brazier that is, instead of having any candles, he's having this light that's making everything shine all, you know, he's visualizing and articulating. Next, yes. Mason, come on, man.
Yeah, I have to agree to what you and Rebecca said. Like, he really paints a picture in your head, and it kind of feels like you're there, like you're in the scene, like watching this whole thing go down. And that's what I enjoy reading these, because he puts so much effort into it to really make you think about what's going on around you, like every detail, every description. He really depicts like what he wants you to see. And
articulates.
He really articulates that. And it's just a really good aspect of his writing because it makes it more enjoyable. Like, you want to read it. Like, you go deeper into the story, and you even have just a reason to keep on going because it's so interesting and it just sparks some imagination into you.
I'd like to add on to Paris's point about you feeling like you're in the story. Like in the line of from The Mask of Red Death, the black velvet tapestries that hung all over the ceiling and down the walls, falling heavy folds upon the carpet in the same material and hue. You feel like you're in that, like you're in the room, like you can go in there. It's like, what's your name? Juliana said about birth to death. So the first room is a blue room, so you can imagine yourself in blue, like all light and blue, and then the last room, the red room. The scarlet color, yeah. I mean, you just feel like you're in the story. Like, every single story, you can imagine yourself as not an important character, but just visualizing yourself in the story. Like, you can be in it, like you're living or watching a movie.
You're in it, yes.
Like, you're in it, or like you're watching it as a movie. Or like the part where it says, with the western black chamber, the effect of the firelight streamed upon the dark hangings through the blood-tinted panes was ghastly to the extreme. You can imagine that. Like, I just love the amount of imagery he uses in his story. It's amazing.
Yeah, and to agree with Daniela and Dr. Bellis, I like how there's so much imagery and it's not on a TV screen. You're not it's not being shown to you. You get to use your own imagination, and everyone's imagination is different. So what's cool is that we may have different points on the story, and then we agree with each other, and then we have different images of what could be created, like with the rooms, how she came up with birth, death, or how everyone has different perspectives of each story.
I do love the imagery, but I also think that the figurative language is just so rich and so awesome in the story. So in Mask of the Red Death, this one always comes to my mind when it's describing the clock, the noise in the clock. That's really hard to describe in a story, like imagining what something sounds like with the words. But when it says, "And the hour was to be stricken, there came from the brazen lungs of the clock a sound which was clear and loud and deep and exceedingly musical." The clock doesn't have lungs.
The brazen lungs. I mean,
It really makes it sound like the clock is so loud, so powerful that you can hear it anywhere. Like I can be in the side of the street or I can be miles and miles away, but I can still feel it. And it's not just hearing it, it's feeling the clock, feeling the vibration in your chest every time it just marks
and
the
how
hour.
everybody, what's that line where everybody stops what they're doing? And then the old people, what does it say? What is the line they go?
The musicians stop.
Everybody
like
stops when
everyone
this
stops.
clock starts,
And I feel like
and they raise their hand
yeah,
to the
they go
brow.
yeah. It was,
Emily.
My favorite line was from Annabelle Lee, that the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing Annabelle Lee. It shows that he misses her and loves her, and his mind is set on what happened to her, and he can't stop thinking about her.
And that's really struck you, that one. Say that line again, which one?
That the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Annabelle Lee.
That is the most cruel thing I have ever heard in my life. That one key sound, that chilling, and then he's just chilling, and I mean, I think it's bone crusher. Go, yes. Oh, Naika.
I have a question though about that. How could like she be chilling and like be like getting killed?
Great question. Yes. Wonderful question.
When it says chilling and killing, I always thought of the disease pneumonia, I think. It's a lung disease, and I thought that really made me remember Virginia's tuberculosis, the tuberculosis happening. It also reminded me of the angels and all that, something that's way beyond what we understand. That feeling of home or stuff like that. I'm not really sure. But
Hey, Dorian.
When I hear chilling and killing, I think of how cold the ocean can be, and the fact that it was a kingdom by the sea, and I think that she could have froze to death or drowned in the ocean at night. Yeah.
okay. So back to the topic on how like all the women in his life died. What if they didn't die? What if they didn't die of tuberculosis? And what if he didn't feel that pain? Would he have written such great deep literature today? Like, I feel like those events happened for a reason, so that we had these amazing poems. And I feel like those women dying really impacted how.
Well, the death of these beautiful women who were innocent.
Yeah.
Guys, the bells were, was this a good seminar?
Yes, you
I
should do it a lot.
Are you glad? Did you memorize?
Yes.
Well,
They do it well.